What little was left of Brown Mogotsi's credibility was destroyed today at the Madlanga Commission. Meanwhile, Donald Trump and the US seem to be softening on the G20 summit in South Africa. We'll get to that, but let's continue with the Madlanga Commission because it was clear that evidence leaders and commissioners were beginning to lose patience with Brown Mogotsi's circuitous way of not answering their questions. Here's a taste.
I'm giving you all the leeway to explain yourself with regard to the lie that you admittedly told. But please don't veer off to a whole lot of other issues.
Thank you, Commissioner. Then it means, Commissioners, we need to start at this particular point. Does the Commission believe and acknowledge that I'm an agent? If the Commission
we cannot answer that. We are still to evaluate the evidence at some point. So we cannot say, yes, we believe you, Mr. Mogotsi. We cannot do that, not now.
Okay. The answer, Commissioner, to the question because the Commission has not yet arrived at the conclusion if I'm an agent. Commissioners, yes, I lied in executing my duties. My conscience, when signing this affidavit, I took an oath in front of that particular police officer, that commissioner of oath, knowing that it's a lie in executing my duties. That's correct, Commissioner.
I'm giving
SMWX fam, if you ever need to hire a car, check out Pace Car Rental, a proudly South African company with the best range of cars for any need. Whether you need a car for a day, a month, or long term, Pace makes it simple and easy with flexible payment options including cash, card, or EFT. From bakkies to minibuses, they've got you covered. But here's the best part. Because you watch SMWX, use promo code SMWX for 5% off your next rental. Now, let's get back to it. So that was Justice Madlanga putting to Brown Mogotsi that some of the untruths that they were putting to him did not mean that they had come to a decision on whether he was telling the truth or not. It just meant that there was some kind of need to test and scrutinize his claims. Now, I want to make very clear that apologies if you're hearing sound in the background. There's some drilling going on where we are right now, and we're live, so we can't change it. But I want to make clear that Madlanga definitely believes that it is not credible. He just can't say it right now. But if you've been watching the commission, then it's very clear that Brown Mogotsi's testimony has not been credible so far. Obviously, no one who's sitting in the middle of a commission can say, you're guilty right now. But it's going to take a lot for Brown Mogotsi to convince South Africans and this commission that what he has said so far is credible. But rather than go through chronologically all the little dates and details and chats, I thought it could be quite confusing. So what I want to try to do is simplify this for you, because there's really one theme that has run through all of the testimony today. And that is that it appears through all the evidence that is at the disposal of the commission that Brown Mogotsi wanted to get Mkhwanazi and Khumalo on something. He was searching for something to nab Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi and General Khumalo on. And first it was over Katmatlala's arrest and whether an IPID person could perhaps be some kind of thorn in Mkhwanazi and Khumalo's side. That didn't work. And there are these chats, and Brown Mogotsi tried to say no, he wasn't talking about the PKTT arrest, and ultimately it emerged that it was about that. So first they tried to get IPID to nab Khumalo based on, now that's lightning, everyone. So we're just going to have wonderful sound effects today. So hey, maybe someone's trying to sabotage SMWX with sound today, people. Shout out to everyone in the live chat, by the way. So That didn't work. Then they tried to get, or Mogotsi was interested in getting Mkhwanazi and Khumalo based on an internal disciplinary hearing involving Feroz Khan. He's also a crime intelligence boss. And the story there is that there was a drug bust, and according to one of the witnesses of this drug bust and one of the participants of this drug bust, this truck, which was carrying like 20 million rands of cocaine, was intercepted, it was found, and as the police were intercepting, according to this person, this General Feroz Khan came and basically let the suspects go and took the consignment, and nothing really ever happened with it. Effectively, the impact of the story was that Khan somehow interfered using his rank according to this witness, and the drug bust was foiled. And there was a disciplinary hearing for Khan over this, and there was a witness who was basically saying this stuff, and Mogotsi was speaking to this witness to try and get him to turn. And instead of saying that Khan had foiled this drug bust, he wanted to say that Mkhwanazi and Khumalo had made him say that. They had pressured him somehow to say that. So Mogotsi again was involved in communications around that, speaking to this witness who said that he could turn if he got money, etc. The details again of it are of interest only to those who are following extremely closely. But to take a step back, what happened was it seemed that there's all this evidence that Mogotsi kept trying to find something that he could blame Mkhwanazi and Khumalo about. If it wasn't the Matlala arrest and getting IPID to challenge them for that, then it was this Feroz Khan disciplinary hearing. Then, when that didn't work, there was this constitutional court case. And Mogotsi said, because the constitutional court case spoke about a General Khumalo and the police, Mogotsi immediately wrote to the minister and said, now we've got them. The constitutional court says Khumalo acted unlawfully, but the problem was it was the wrong Khumalo. So what was this constant effort to try and get Mkhwanazi and Khumalo in trouble that Brown Mogotsi was involved in, if the evidence is anything to be believed? So we saw that there was this constant effort on Mogotsi's part. Now, there were a couple of other things that he mentioned. There was this meeting at Senzo Mkunu's house. We couldn't get the details from Mogotsi as to who these people were who were going to the meeting, what the real purpose was for the meeting, because Mogotsi, unfortunately, was being extremely evasive and going down all kinds of off routes and off ramps in his testimony. So there was that. There was also the fact that Mogotsi knew about the PKTT's disbandment before anyone on social media or in the media. And Mogotsi himself didn't seem to know that he knew this before everyone else. He said, no, it was all over social media. I just told Matlala what I was seeing on social media. But then evidence leader Adv Chaskalson SC was like, well, we did a search of social media and this was not there at the time that you told Matlala that the team had been disbanded. So again, it seems that Mogotsi was not able to provide evidence for his side of the story either. Furthermore, Mogotsi knew that these dockets were being sent to Sibiya. Now, interestingly, we've had all kinds of generals coming before these commissions and committees saying that it was irregular for the documents to be sent to Sibiya. It wouldn't be a natural thing. And yet, Mogotsi maintained no one told him that the documents were going to Sibiya. He just assumed that would be what happened. That was his testimony. So to take a step back, what we've heard this week from Brown Mogotsi is that actually, yes, he was involved in all of these conversations, but it was because he was working for crime intelligence, and it wasn't clear what crime intelligence was doing and in what relation he was working for crime intelligence. It's strange to me. Here's what I think possibly happened. Crime intelligence, Mogotsi may have had some kind of association with them. But he also had some kind of association with Matlala. And maybe he was playing all of them off for his own financial benefit. In other words, getting money as an informant from crime intelligence when it suited him, but then also getting money from Matlala when it suited him, and maybe trying to play this double life of being an informant to organized crime and an informant to crime intelligence. And remember, there's a thin line between organized crime and crime intelligence. And Mogotsi seems to be on all sides of this line at different times. So there was that. Now, the last question for Mogotsi, by the way, is why was he receiving monies from Matlala? And why was he receiving these financial benefits from him? And that is another key question which he failed to answer. So apparently he's coming back to the commission, but not next week, Tuesday. I guess we'll hear from him later at some other stage. Okay, so let's move on then to Parliament, because there we had a General Fani who was giving testimony, and it just wasn't funny. So I want to first give a shout out to everyone in the comments over there. Let me give a shout out to Angel, give a shout out to Kathy, give a shout out to Hlatsi, shout out to all of you. Some of you talking about the lightning. It's a nice backdrop. It's a nice backdrop for the kinds of things that are happening in South Africa these days. So Parliament, General Fani, who is he? He's involved in supply chain. What does that mean? Money, contracts, tenders, things that the police need to buy, goods and services. He's kind of the head of that. And I must say this was quite unsatisfactory testimony, because General Fani sat on this high decision-making body about tenders in the police, what's called, for this Matlala tender, the Bid Adjudication Committee. This is the final body that says, okay, we've got all the different shortlisted possibilities and we give the tender to this group. Now, of course, this Bid Adjudication Committee gave the tender to Matlala, and we heard at the Madlanga Commission, Morgan Maumela also had an interest in this. So there were these figures who were involved in the Tembisa hospital and all of that, and yet somehow the police didn't pick up who these people were. And they awarded this tender, which was subsequently revoked when they had already awarded it. And you would think that someone who was in this position would show some contrition and say, well, clearly there's a problem and we take responsibility. But no. He said, no, it wasn't the Bid Adjudication Committee that should have known the problems with Matlala and his business. It was the Bid Evaluation Committee, the step before it gets to adjudication. So when there's a tender, there are these different committees that sit at different points, and there's kind of a pre-screening before it gets to adjudication, and that's evaluation. And this evaluation committee is really tasked with doing the due diligence. And once they do that, then the Bid Adjudication Committee says, well, based on the points and the criteria, this group or this company gets the tender. So Fani basically pushed all responsibility to the evaluation committee, where he said, hey, look, we just rely on them telling us they've done the due diligence. We can't do the due diligence again. And the evaluation committee should have picked this up. And when asked, how come the adjudication committee didn't figure out that, number one, Medicare 2024 was owned by someone who'd had brushes with the law, someone who was involved in the Tembisa hospital situation. Jeff Wicks has reported about the way you can find out the addresses of these companies and see that, they're not necessarily long-established entities. How come they didn't do that basic work? Well, Fani said, well, look, if we are going to look at every single document, then it's going to be a whole new job for us. That's the job of the committee below us. But that's not quite true, because no one is asking them to look at every document, but one would request or imagine that an adjudication committee would at least ask some basic elementary questions like, has this person been involved in organized crime that we're giving this tender to? Or is there any current investigation ongoing involving this company? So I don't know, it just doesn't make sense. No one is taking responsibility for anything. The people above say it was the people below. The people below say it was the people above. And the people who are not above or below say it wasn't them either. And the people above and below say, no, it wasn't us, it was the people in the middle. But all this money left. If no one is accountable, then how did the money go? How did this tender get awarded, at least? And some of the money actually get paid out to Matlala. So, yeah, it's just a bit worrying that nobody seems to be taking accountability for any of this. Let's take a look at Ola Ngola asking a question of General Fani in Parliament to get a sense of what was happening.
Is that report accurate that Mr. Matlala was given a lease for the use of healthcare facilities in the state before he was actually awarded a 360 million tender, 6 months before that? Is the report accurate?
That report is accurate.
Okay. They call him a tender prophet. They call him a tender prophet because only a prophet would have known that in the next 6 months, a tender requiring these same facilities would be awarded to me. Now, this actually raises a serious concern in the eye of the public. Because it suggests that 6 months before the SAPS undertook the process to award the tender, Mr. Matlala knew. As a result, he was preparing to work in respect of that tender.
So there you go, some interesting questioning there. And of course, just before the tender was awarded, Matlala mysteriously got this very convenient lease as well. So there was talk that Matlala was paying someone on the bid evaluation committee, a certain, I think, I can't remember, it was Captain Cartwright or Colonel Cartwright. And so it's clear that there's someone was on the take here. Obviously, these are allegations that need to be tested. But it has been reported in News 24, which Fani just confirmed was accurate in some of its reporting, that Captain Cartwright was involved in massaging the bid evaluation criteria to benefit Matlala's Medicare 24 company. So that happened. What else has been happening away from this Madlanga Commission? Well, of course, South Africa is hosting the G20 summit, this gathering of global leaders. And in the build-up to the Leaders Summit, which will be this weekend, various other groupings have come together. There's been the B20 Summit, which is business leaders, the Social Summit, activists and social leaders. And in some ways, this just epitomizes South Africa, doesn't it? On the one hand, we are a place that is convening the world's leaders because we are a key voice in the Global South, a key meeting place and melting pot of Global South, trying to forge a new global order that's more just and equitable. The best of South Africa. But at the same time, we're all listening to how our country has been captured by criminal syndicates. And so we have what South Africa could and should be, and we have what South Africa also really is, happening at the same time, in the same week, on the same streams. So this moment is fascinating because there's almost like this dialogue going on between what is South Africa really? Is it the country that we try to portray to the rest of the world, or is it the country that we see every day in our everyday reality? But we got some good news from a G20 perspective when it looks like the Trump White House, that has had a very aggressive and false stance towards South Africa with these wild claims of Afrikaner persecution, has softened its attitude somewhat and will take part in a handover ceremony at the G20 summit on the 23rd of November. Remember, the Trump administration had said over South Africa's domestic policy and this persecution, which only seems to exist in the fertile imagination of Mr. Trump, they would be boycotting this G20 summit. And they even said the G20 summit shouldn't come up with a declaration because the US wouldn't recognize it. And I think South Africa and President Ramaphosa took the right stance. They said, we're going ahead, we're forging ahead. It's sad that President Trump won't be at the summit, but we don't equate the United States with the Trump administration, which is merely a pinprick in time over the long span of time of geopolitics. And so we regret what President Trump is saying, but we're going to carry on and forge ahead with the rest of the world and more fool Trump for continuing to peddle these conspiracy theories. Now, the US has said, okay, we're not going with the full boycott, we're actually going to be there, and that's great. It's great for us. It's not great for the Trump administration because it will look like a capitulation. But as we've seen on the Epstein files, capitulations are becoming quite regular with this administration. And so there we are. And speaking of the Epstein files, one should also note Women for Change, a campaign that has been running in South Africa around the G20, using the attention that's being trained on South Africa and the G20 to spotlight and highlight the scourge of sexual violence and gender-based violence in South Africa. I believe they have a petition that's got over 1 million signatures. Is that right? Over 1 million signatures for their petition for the government to recognize gender-based violence as an emergency. I believe President Ramaphosa made some suggestions in his speech recently at the Social Summit that government would be recognizing this. But nonetheless, I don't think South Africans should be afraid of protest in our democratic space. And I think it's good that this issue, which is so crucial, which is such a scourge on our society and our democracy, is being highlighted. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that campaign for the great work that they have done to raise this issue and use this moment to continue to hold up a mirror on South African society. Fam, like, share, subscribe. I hope I'll see you on the next one. And I just wanted to play you this little clip because this is how I am leaving tonight's episode. Have a good night.
I'm coming back again on Tuesday.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mogotsi.
Oh.
Mr. Mogotsi thought that he was expected back on Tuesday, but it's been clarified that he's...
Oh, your legal representatives will clarify to you, Mr. Mogotsi.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you.
You will be able to.